Jimmy wants to set the agenda?
Well, I'll move to set the agenda.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Consider the approval of an ordinance adopting the City of Belmont's budget for 2023-24.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to give a quick recap on the proposed budget that was presented during the June 12th City Council meeting. And of course, you all know that a public hearing was also held at that time. For the general fund, the budget was proposed at 45.5 cents, which is a 4-cent reduction in the tax rate from this current fiscal year. The existing tax rate is 49.5 cents per $100 value. Also want to point out that the tax rate was reduced 2 cents last fiscal year. So if the consideration was a 4-cent plus a 2-cent, it would have been a total of 6 cents over the past 2 years. The revenue neutral tax rate is 39.3 cents per $100 value, and the value of 1 penny is $271,009 for a total general fund budget of $20,350,675. For the utility fund, water and sewer, the total budget there was $9,293,983. And there were several other funds that showed in the budget ordinance. For stormwater was $770,200. The tourism fund was $242,520. And then capital reserve for the general fund was $1,500. And the utility fund was $3,200. For personnel, the position allotment went to 179 full-time employees, which included 7 new positions that were funded, one being a patrol officer, a firefighter, a recreation specialist, a recreation janitor, a customer service specialist, a human resource specialist, and a street maintenance technician. There was also salary adjustments of 2% across the board, and then a 3% merit on top of that. For the capital improvements that were budgeted, of course, council, you all have oversight and approval of some of the design, the bids, and or if we're financing certain items, you'll be prepared to, staff will present the financing agreements to you all. But inside the capital improvements that were budgeted, you had police duty firearms and police vehicle equipment. You had a mini trash truck and a claw truck, information technology replacements, a new camera system, Council Dias construction with audio-visual equipment, Chronicle Street parking lot, Stowe Park and Davis Park playground solid surfacing, and Davis Park picnic shelters. And that was for the total 45.5 cent tax rate. The ordinance, was also included in your council packet last week and also included in the council packet this week. And then, of course, you all had a discussion on if we could move that number down to 44.5 cents. And so staff went back and we looked around and determined where we could take that 44.5 cent, try to find $271,000 to remove out of the 45.5 cent budget. We do have a budget ordinance prepared if you all decide to go to the 44.5 cent. But 1 cent, of course, equals that $271,009. So the reason we moved these 2 items out was to get to the 44.5 cent. One item that we removed from the capital improvement program that was listed last week was the land acquisition for the North Belmont Public Safety Station. That land acquisition was budgeted at $170,000. And then we reduced the future proceeds for potential debt financing for $100,000, which totaled that $270,000, which creates the general fund budget at 44.5 cents. The general fund budget would be $20,079,666. Jared is here. He has the capital modeling program, and so we're going to let Jared present a few slides on that, and then, of course, answer your questions.
Sure. So good afternoon, Council. So what I did was just took snapshots of the capital model based on a 45.5 and 44.5 cent tax rate, so you can visualize that. Just to note the assumptions made here, kind of going back to what Miles just presented, we did turn off the North Belmont Public Safety Station. We added $2.13 million for the fire station remodel starting in 2025. That was scheduled to be in 2028, but we went ahead and removed that as well and moved that up to 2025. And then obviously the two different tax rates here. So this first slide is at 45.5 cent. As you can see, the unassigned fund balance stays above that 50% threshold until 2033. I did also want to note that that CIP listing that we have in the model is not all conclusive, right? So we're going to have projects that are going to be added on to that. So I just wanted to, I guess, mention that. So that fund balance number could change as we get more data and we're able to get more information into this model in future years. We'll really be able to project this number out future. But as it is right now, that's what that would look like at 45.5. You can go to the next slide. And then there's just the graphs that you guys have seen before on the model, just showing that target line. And then the next slide shows at the 44.5. And at the 44.5, and these are the same assumptions that I just mentioned that are turned off, you'll see that our unassigned fund balance percentage starts to drop in 2029 below that 50% threshold and continues to drop thereafter. So we would probably need to make some changes after that year mark, but that does buy us a little bit of time there. Again, that's with that North Belmont Public Safety Station turned off.
And this is 44.5?
That is for 44.5, yep.
And can you go back to the 45.5?
Mm-hmm.
What year does that? 2032?
Yeah, on the 45.5, it's at, I'm sorry, I should have blown that up. That's at 2033, where it dips below that 50% threshold.
And that has the additional firefighters also shut off during this?
It does, yep, in the operating impacts tab.
And what is the growth, the future growth projections?
At 1%.
1%. And then what is the future COLA and merit after? Is it?
It would be 3% starting in 2029. Might be 2028. I'd have to pull up my model to make sure that I have that refreshed correctly.
And this has the $2 million for the Keener Boulevard
That's
station
correct.
improvement?
Starting in 2025.
What's the difference between, again, this isn't a blind side or anything, but
Sure.
the file that Kevin sent me on copy Friday afternoon, what's the difference between that and this?
This is the same file. That's the same one that I opened up and screenshotted.
Because this one goes to 2035.
So unless there's I can pull it up to see if there's another assumption, but I basically just pulled that file that he sent, plugged in the 45.5, made sure everything was turned off like we had talked about, screenshotted it, did the same thing for 44.5.
Okay, because I just pulled this one up from the email, the last one he sent over.
Okay. I'm not sure then because I used the same file because I pulled that from my email. So
First one or second one he sent?
The second one.
Okay, that's the one I have up.
Okay. I can plug it in and we can go through it together if that's going to be better than looking at these screenshots.
I just want to make sure we have it right. So if we could
I think it might be better to work off the live
let's do
file.
that.
yeah.
You have that on the file that I sent you. Then I can click around and drive in there.
Because I didn't adjust it after he sent it.
Can I use this mouse? All right, so let's go. We'll first start at CIP. So we've got, I can't even see that.
I know that.
It's actually better to do it on your computer, so you can see it.
I can stand here. All right, so we've got public safety station change. We revised that from the actual public safety station to the remodel at 2.1 million.
Yep.
And the I-85 was turned off, heavy greenway was turned off in the May meeting. Main fire station renovation project turned off. That was this price right here starting in 2028.
What row is that?
2029. Row 16.
Okay.
Make sure everything else is turned off. Belmont Rail Trail turned on. Ball field lights reduced. I-85 turned off. All of that looks good. sure that our debt assumption is right on the model, which it is. 44 and a half. You want me to plug this at 45? Or which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, go to 45 and a half.
No, it's not.
I think you have to enable the cut.
Oh,
Oh, God.
No, no.
I don't even know that I can sign it. We've had issues with this. I'm typing on my computer. Maybe I can try mine first. First one will work for now. It looks like it now. Okay. Jesus. Okay. I don't know.
You want to sit over here and plug in your
Yes.
laptop?
No,
Plug in
yes.
mine. You plug in mine.
so I guess we need to up the software budget. for
Yeah,
next
usually.
year.
I can do one more three. Yeah, right.
This is the one you emailed me, right?
Yep. We'll just go through each tab and just make sure.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't know where the difference, the delta's coming from.
We'll figure out where. Something's going on here.
360. So we play some dance music while we're figuring this out.
It's just an elevator music.
Only if you dance for us, Charlie.
That's what I get.
Goes down the wrong way.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll skip the dancing.
say water's healthy for you, right?
But under either scenario, then both have the North Belmont Public Safety Station turned off.
That's correct.
The renovations to the main station moved up to 2025. Is that correct? At about $2 million and some change. 2.1.
And the difference is that $271,000, just taking property acquisition out of next year's budget.
So I'm a little confused as to the other 100 where we came up with that from.
It's the amount that's used to finance debt, upcoming years, future years, upcoming debt. So we
really what it was going to be was a transfer to fund balance, but it with the intention of funding future projects.
Now, the North Station, the 7.9 was kind of configured on 10,000 square feet.
That's correct.
And that was the main item, is going to be a 10,000 square foot station. So that's how we arrived at that number. For this 2.1 or 6 for the renovation, what is backing that number? Do we have any hard costs associated with it, or we just assign 2 point whatever?
It would have been included in the CIP plans or CIP meetings coming from 2 years. Maybe similar quotes or ballpark estimates based on like size renovations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're moving that forward from 29 to 25. Is that right? 28 to 25.
Yeah, not sure what's going on there. Where were we getting the slides from? I guess because I didn't see it, but
The problem is that whenever we try to do office products, it's a little weird here, but because it's not
Does
really
that,
sure, does that. That's, see that, we'll look at it. Because it didn't used to do that. You would just have to log into one of our accounts and do the copy.
maybe I could try a personal thing and do the 1 month free option. And just rock and roll. That might be the way to go here, if that's not working.
Let's see, this is gonna work now. Done all this too. No, free choice.
So what's the upshot of taking the 170 for the acquisition out of the budget? That means you're not even going to look over the next fiscal year for a site, or?
We could, depending on where the study comes back. If the study does say that we need a station and we need to acquire land, at that point, if we needed to acquire land next fiscal year, it could be through a budget amendment. For example, we could use unassigned fund balance and then possibly do a budget amendment, depending on the piece, the size, location. That's what we were thinking. Given that it wasn't going to be budgeted for 2025, then why buy land when we don't really know? So
That's true.
We could take that out and then wait for the study to tell us exactly where it is.
Then Miles, for that study, in regards to understanding if it's needed, does that also take into account our interlocal agreements with Mount Holly and then the county fire station as well? Because I feel like if it just took Belmont and the capacity of what Belmont can do, it'll be skewed potentially. But we also have to include, I believe, the factors of our interlocal agreements, which is why we have the interlocal agreements with Mount Holly and then the county fire station as well up there. So we'll include that as well.
I'm pretty sure, I don't think Chief's here to answer the question, but it should take into consideration all the surrounding stations and that response time, and if there's a gap in coverage plus the MOUs, I would assume they'd do that.
Okay, because the only reason why I just kind of bring that up is, and it was kind of, I think, a comment that Chief Davis said, is that Mount Holly does generally respond to that area up there.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, that's one of the reasons why we have interlocal agreements. I feel like with our partners or neighboring cities, just similar to like the city water or Charlotte water agreement we're in, to try to reduce cost and future probably major impacts that we could have. So I feel like we should lean on our interlocal agreements up there, just as kind of a comment there.
But we should, but I will remind you that when we looked at buying a ladder truck, Mount Holly had one, but the time difference and what we were looking at, we decided to go ahead and purchase the ladder truck, which was one of the bigger expenses that we had. So that, yeah, we do cooperate, we've got those agreements, but we're still mainly responsible for our citizens. So that was a big discussion at that time.
Right, but I mean, and just to completely agree, but we are still at the ISO rating of 3, which is above average for other municipalities within our region, per Todd Davis, which means that we're providing above adequate service at that level 3 to our residents, including the North Belmont area. So that city is a Belmont based off of our ISO rating of how I understand it. I just was curious with the study that's being conducted if it will also incorporate the interlocal agreement with Mount Holly and then the county department as well up there.
Well, I don't think the North Station is going to impact our ISO rating that much. It is going to impact our response times. But you're right. Our interlocal agreements, each firehouse has a 5-mile radius response area. So, yeah, within our interlocals, we're covered with Community and Catawba Heights. Catawba Heights and Community always beat us to North Belmont because they respond first. They don't have to fight the traffic. So, yeah, I mean, the data is going to have to really be crunched to take a look at this and see what we need up there.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, nobody's house is going to burn down up there. We're still responding. It's just a matter of like, which truck gets there
the
first.
last fire here on Lincoln Street, I just happened to be in the area, noted Belmont, of course, Mount Holly, Cramerton, and West Mecklenburg all rolled an engine to that house fire. So, I mean, there was, for one house, there's plenty of coverage. But as far as the study goes, you know, I was trying to remember our initial study about the needs of how many stations we need in Belmont was somewhere around 1995 and 96. And I think was brought on, that was the time that we annexed the far land up there, which would have been the Linford Mill, Acme, and another mill. So at that time, they instituted a study about coverage, which was done by the League of Municipalities, or COG. Mm-hmm. So they did the studies around somewhere. So I was thinking, I mean, do we want to, this is something for council to digest, do we go with the fire chiefs or do we go back and lean on COG or the League? Because this is also what they're there to do, you know, these kinds of studies, and we are a member.
Do they still provide that service?
I'm assuming they do, but I haven't talked to them. I just was trying to recollect the study and the impetus for the study, and it was the annexation of those properties somewhere in the mid-90s.
It's gone.
2 years from now, we'll be looking at our budget saying, are we still paying for this?
Yeah.
Let's try this.
there
Yeah,
way-
I was about to say, do you want to just pull it? Because again, the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's a huge difference. And the benefit being on here, and again, I haven't adjusted anything, and I could have sworn we had talked Friday, North Belmont Fire Station removal, 4 firefighter, not fire, but just not hiring them for that. And this is at 45.5. 1% future growth rate. And then from the revenue perspective, salary and benefits growth, 5%, 5%, 5%, 25 through 27, and then 20 or 3%, 28.
In the version Kevin sent me, I think that version of the file, probably before he sent it to you, Alex, and he's got the 4 firefighters in here under the operational impacts tab. So I'm wondering if maybe I don't know what numbers you're looking at, but I just happened to notice that I was
You want to come join the
looking
party?
around.
We'll figure out where the difference is. So let's start. We know CIP was the same. I think CIP was okay.
There shouldn't have been any changes in there.
So we're good on that. I think it might be in this operating impacts on these. Yep, additional firefighters.
So I have it off.
That's the difference.
And go to dashboard.
Everything else. 1%, and you're at 45.5.
45.5, 1% growth.
There we go.
There we go.
We're closer. Something else is different.
Go to your income statement. 5%, 5%, 5%, 3%, 49.5.
Did you have a chance to look at that screenshot?
Okay, it's not that.
Yeah, I need to see the context though. I think it. I don't think it's saying what you think it's saying.
I wasn't.
Go back to that real quick. Right here in 2025, something's changing. Oh no, it's not. That's the same. Huh.
Darn close to you're talking about 0.12% approximately across the board. Debt assumption 2.1. Here's the difference. 2.128 million instead of 2.1 million.
Okay, so we called it up
I don't know why that happened because back here
because it was
it's showing
2.1.
2.1. No, 2.128. That's the difference. So you're just missing the 28,000.
Was it 2.128?
Yep. Now we should be good. Let's check the dashboard.
44.47, 44.47. Okay,
Yeah. All right.
awesome.
So the differences were $28,000 difference on the Keener Boulevard remodel. He had 2.1 million versus the 2.128 that was on the CIP tab. So his debt assumption was just slightly off. And then what was the other thing that we?
Firefighters with
The
4 additional.
firefighters were turned on in my screenshot for the new safety station, which would not be needed since we had turned that on. And if we do that, and I can bring my computer around so everyone can see it, at 45.5, we stay above 70% on unassigned fund balance through 2028. It does start to dip thereafter, but we stay above 50% through 2035. And I can kind of toggle between, that way you guys are actually visualizing it. So this would be the 45.5. So you'll see our unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditure stays healthy through 2035. And I'll walk around again.
And keep in mind, this is with a conservative approach too, with the 1% growth rate, and then it still has 5%, 5%, and 5% for salary increases for.
The sales tax growth is also pretty conservative.
Because in perpetuity, we called down based off of the potential economic climate of this year, but that's in perpetuity. It was never called back up. So then there's the potential, like we were talking about, for future revenue and income from a better economy.
Yeah.
I'm good. I was thinking that's what you're talking about.
So that's at 45 and a half, and then I'll change it to 44 and a half to show everybody.
Okay.
We'll start with you and I'll make all that.
Which in this particular picture though with the 45 and a half, I mean, what this tells us is that we're extremely healthy until 2035 or anything. And that takes the same exact tax rate in perpetuity till 2035.
Okay.
But we never do eclipse that 70% mark except for here, which our peer group is in the 70s, 50% is still healthy.
Okay.
When we say our peer group, Jared, is that like what percentile? Is that just like the top percentile of functioning cities, or is that
That would be
the majority of?
cities our size.
Okay.
So
I think there was actually a list in here
there's a
somewhere.
list. If you go to the back tabs, Alex.
I see.
Yeah, Carborough.
You can take a look at the other municipalities that are like our size.
Yeah, Carborough, Clayton, Davidson, and Holly. Riverbend?
So you'll
I don't
see
know what that
it
is.
changes.
And where are they
slightly.
sitting?
Penny difference.
I do
Lower.
see. So
It bumps us up to 2031.
this is their general fund balance over here. Dallas has got a very healthy one. So Mount Holly.
Oh, that's a teeny tiny bit town. 3,000 people.
Davidson.
Thank you.
I don't know. I gotta
We would
Google that
be.
now.
So sorry about that visualization there.
Starting here.
That's a new
45,
one.
escalating up to 70,
Great.
71, and then
Yeah.
And then trending
de-escalating
back
it back
down.
down. Yeah.
But that is through 2035.
So for me, obviously both keep us above that 50% threshold for a good period of time. But again, I do want to emphasize that we are going to be adding additional CIP projects each and every year. And we also don't know what the results of that study are going to be and what we're going to need to be doing going forward. But that's neither here nor there until we find out the results.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was gonna, something else that we had kind of, by we I mean me and Alex, had discussed was since we have taken down the growth projections, the compensation projections that we had been using, I mean, those were based on more aggressive growth. So an idea we were kicking around was doing 4% this year and then 3% next year and forever, evermore. And that appears to substantially change at least the stability of the fund balance.
So 4 starting in 2025?
4 starting in whatever this, 2025, yep. And then 3 after that. And then at 45 and a half, it looks like that keeps you above 70% all the way through 2036. And then at 45 and a half, you're still above 50. You're right at
44.
55% in 2036. Sorry?
You said 45 twice, which at 44 and a half, what would we be at?
Oh, 44 and a half. In 2036, you're at 54.96% with a $13.7 million fund balance. If you're at 45 and a half, your fund balance is 71% at just under 17.8 million. Using the same assumptions that Jared just walked around the room with.
Yeah, so we can do that. That ultimately does not change the revenue side, right?
Mhm.
Because either of those ordinances is still going to come in the same revenue. We could still adopt with the same expenditure total, knowing that it's going to be 2 and 2 versus 2 and 3. So we would be theoretically over budgeting on salaries.
Could we book it to capital then? So like you take the overage, I think you were talking to try to get to the balanced budget.
We could, but we would also have to redraft the ordinance.
Right.
Because the
I see what
ordinance-
you're saying.
Yeah, we would have to redraft the ordinance there to move that money out of salaries out of each department and flow that to capital. So
Yeah.
the 2 ordinances that we have drafted tonight would need to be revised if we went that route, which is doable. Or we could transfer the budget. It's 6 of 1. There's more than one way to skin a cat here.
Yeah, I mean, we could always adopt a working copy of the budget, I suppose, and then do an amendment.
Correct, or a budget transfer to shore up that over budget and salaries to capital.
Right.
You know, while we do that, before we do that next budget amendment, if we do, if that's what the rest of council decides on, I think it would be interesting to understand, because at one point in time during one of the previous budget workshops, we talked about a correlation between the growth factor and then the increase, like that 3%, that 4%, whatever it is, the 5%. How do we measure that to where it's not just pick and choose? Like, is there not a direct correlation or formulation that we can actually tie it to? Now, I know we'd also have to have like a CPI, consumer price index, in there as well, because inflation is not necessarily going to follow our growth pattern. But I feel like there's something that we can do to where it's more calculated, as opposed to just saying, you know what I mean, like 3% this year, 5% that year, and that way we can turn back. I don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking if there's some type of method we could use to formulate that.
I'm not sure. I think in general, just as far as an industry standard, I think it's you try to be consistent with that year over year rather than just cherry picking each year, right? Historically, it has been that 3 and 2, and that's why we defaulted to that. Certainly, we can move away from that. I don't think there's anything in policy that would say that we had to do that. That's just been kind of what we've done over the years. So that 2% cost of living up to 3% merit has been Belmont's standard. I'm not sure how to answer your question other than, you know, trying to be, I guess, aiming for consistency on that.
Yeah.
So if we revise that, I think it would be, you know, I guess pertinent to continue being consistent, but I mean, that's also council direction.
Yeah, if you look back at the CPI and you set it for like a February date each year, I would caution, because the last couple of years we tried to do that in another municipality that I worked at, and last year it was like a 9% in the CPI, and so therefore that was a policy they set.
I think
We had to do away with it because it was 9%, and so we had to go back to something else.
No, I understand that.
I think having an idea of like what you want the long run average to look like, and then you can kind of like, I mean, you can set something like this around it. Like if you want it to be 3% forever, you can set that in here, and then like year to year you'd adjust. So like,
But as long as our weighted average equals to the pacing
Right.
of 3%.
yeah. So that way you're not doing like, you know, 9% one year, 2% the next year, you know, kind of jerking your employees all over the place. You know, you've kind of got, and it helps with the budgeting too, because it makes it a little bit more predictable.
Essentially, we want to make it predictable. Now, last year was an anomaly. I mean, I don't know that we're going to see spikes like that ongoing.
I would hope not.
Knock on some wood.
Yeah.
Because it does change a lot. And again, to understand it too, it's like you break down, it's a multiplier effect, right? And we were talking about this on the phone. Because, you know, you've got salary, benefit, 401k, and
Elders.
thank you. So every time we do a 4% there, it's a multiply of 4, which is why the budget will then begin to balloon in those instances. And why I said tie it to a correlation of growth is if we don't have sustainable growth in the long run of future, then you start seeing expenses balloon, and then you're going to have to start increasing expenses. Now, obviously, we talked about the past 2 years have been heavy with hiring new staff, is to ramp up from where we've been lagging and behind for years past. So eventually that should start leveling off too, but still, you're still going to have that balloon effect with the expense. So it's like trying to play yin and yang with this.
Yeah, I mean, that was my concern with any of the projections we looked at last time, was that regardless of what you set the tax rate at, by the end of the, whatever this is, 15-year period, your fund balance is still substantially smaller than where it started, and there's not really anything to alter that course. And I think a lot of that has to do with the load that the operating budget is putting on our finances. And in my opinion, it's easier to correct that problem now, while you've still got, you know, 15 to 20 years to let the numbers kind of play out, rather than getting to a point where, you know, you've got $3 million left in your fund balance and you're either faced with substantially cutting back on services or a substantial tax increase on your residents, neither of which is really a desirable outcome in either situation. So this kind of like, you know, I feel like that's kind of a direction we need to go on this, is Because if you do that, this is a very simple change, and it really does a lot to, I think, stabilize the long-term health of our finances. And and then it's just at that point the tax rate really just kind of affects like what kind of cushion you want to have. So you can leave it at 45.5, and then you've got a very conservative cushion for if we end up wanting to do the firehouse, or we need to build something else, or there's all kinds of stuff that we don't know that's going to happen.
Like the operation of the rec center, which I mentioned before, we have no idea really what that's going to be.
Yeah, so I mean,
Completely agree.
That gives us a lot of room for error there. You can take it down further than that if you want, and that just basically it's kind of like a personal decision about how much risk you're willing to tolerate as far as budget risk here. So, but I definitely think we need to kind of look at the impact that these salaries are having on the operating budget, because it is substantial.
I think so too. And again, this isn't to say, one way or the other. We have to take a motion out of this and look at this from the perspective of how do we run a city in long term and perpetuity is the way that I look at it. Again, just my 2 cents in regards to the tax rate. I think 45.5 is, in my opinion, where we should land. An observation I made with looking into some of the previous data and also looking in the future, what we have done is we have used our capital line item, which we're all familiar with, as basically as a plug to be able to balance the budget, whether that's subtracting or whether that's adding. For us to be looking at this budget and to be able to start looking at the future ahead of us as opposed to today for the city of Belmont with infrastructure needs, with all the things that we have coming towards us, we need to start using that and saying we're keeping this at, maybe in the future we set an amount and then we're able to lock it in. We don't have to do it tonight, but we don't keep pulling out from that fund to balance the budget. Maybe that's when we look at operating expenses or something else. But we have to start taking our capital needs more seriously, in my opinion, from the budget perspective, as opposed to using it as a fluctuation for our plugs. Because who's to say, infrastructure needs, we've all talked about road improvements and us stepping up to the plate where NCDOT is saying that they're not able to accommodate us. That's the money that we're going to have to use to do it. We have an aging water system, a water plant over there that we've heard from the public works people that someday we're going to have to do some stuff to that. We need to start building that nest egg a little bit larger and a little bit more to that volume where we're able to do that stuff as opposed to using it to balance this budget. So that's just kind of a 2 cents from my perspective.
I don't disagree with any of that. I want to set us up for success no matter what we do, but I also want to make sure we're setting up future councils, because we're laying the groundwork now for what they're going to be able to do in the future. I am comfortable at 45.5 because I think that gets us close to where we need to be.
I'm also more comfortable with 45.5 based on a lot of what's been discussed, and just being a generally very risk-averse person. I'd rather be overcautious, and then if it turns out we're wrong in that direction, we can go lower, than to go the other way and end up having to figure out like where's the money, or having to raise taxes, as Mark said, neither one of which would be palatable. So I'm more comfortable at 45.5, and I'm certainly not as adept at statistics and numbers as you all are. I'm certainly interested in working out some of those other things. It doesn't sound like any of those things that you all have been talking about necessarily need to be decided today, but certainly, I think that's a good discussion to have. But for the time being, I'm more comfortable at 45.5.
Okay.
Martha?
I was comfortable at 45.5 at the last meeting, about 3 hours worth of discussion. We had our people, our staff, spend a huge amount of time preparing this budget. I understand all the concerns, but this is, to me, somewhat inefficient use of time for this particular piece of it. I see when we're projecting and all that kind of thing, so 45.5 is where I stand.
I agree.
So I did want to mention three things, kind of just wrapping up my brain of what you guys just said. So tying back to what you said about the CIP plan, I appreciate you bringing that up because I think using this model kind of coincides with what you're talking about. I can't speak for what happened in the past, but I think going forward, we really need to be keeping our eyes on the windshield about what's coming down the pipeline as far as capital projects, how we're going to fund them. This model kind of takes that into consideration. And also, we are going to continue using this year after year. So we're going to have better data, more information that we're going to be able to plug. So this is just year one, right? So we're going to be using this every year forward. The second thing is if we do decide to adjust that salary percentage, I will have to run that through the budget, and we will have to redraft an ordinance. I think that's going to be the easiest thing. We want to adopt an ordinance that's reflective of what you are intending to do tonight. So I would need to open up that budget workbook, not this one, but the budget workbook, go to those legend tabs and flow the 4% or 3%, whatever it is, instead of the 5% through all departments. And then I would have to plug that excess back to capital, which would be earmarked for future capital projects, which is what we took away in the 44.5-cent scenario.
Was that not in 2025 though, for 4%? For clarification, just to make sure, I thought it was not next year, but the following year.
Okay, then we wouldn't need to do anything. If we did it if we did it for this budget year, I would have to redraft an ordinance.
Is that what you?
Okay, my misunderstanding then.
Mark, the 4% in 2025 within the model.
Oh, so that's actually next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that was just. Oh. Okay.
So if that's the case, then nothing changes at 45.5. We've got both ordinances ready to roll. My mistake.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. I did not realize that. I assumed that the first cell there was the current budget year, but now I misread the spreadsheet. But that's okay.
Yeah, the percentage for the current year flows from the budget workbook and those general fund legend, enterprise fund legend, where you key in the salary increase. So you would plug, instead of 5% there, you would plug 4%, 3%, whatever you want to do. Okay. But again, that would change your expense totals, and I would have to redo them.
No, I mean, the numbers work the way I've got them in here. So, I mean, if you've got 5 for this year.
And go to 3% mark on 2025, and then you see the complete change in the.
Yeah, where did that go?
So you've got 4% for 2025 and 3% thereafter?
Yeah, I'm just showing him it looked a little bit different from where it actually starts.
If you do 3% next year, you're looking at a fund balance closer to 80%. Well, I guess that's a conversation we have next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's fine. The way I've got it in here, I mean, I'm comfortable with that.
I would caution, I mean, I think this is great. This is a lot better than what we've used in the past. But if there's anything we've learned since March 2020, models only get you so far. Obviously we'll have more data as we go further. We'll have audits as we go forward. Yeah. But numbers can show numbers can show a lot of things, depending on what you want them to. So I just caution a little bit about that because I heard a lot about models in 2020, and some of them just didn't pan out, or it's the same thing that you were talking about. No matter what we put in, it seems like everything goes. Eventually it goes down, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen in reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the nice thing about having this, is that it gives you some accountability. So then, you could pull up the file next year and be like, oh, well, this is what we projected and this is what actually happened. If there's substantial differences, they can adjust accordingly. Yeah. It also builds some accountability for council, because then, if they want to take the tax rate down to 20 cents, be like, well, that wasn't really planned when we did the budget 2 years ago. So, I mean, I think that helps.
And just to make it certain, I'm not being flippant about this at all. I'm very much concerned because I'm a mathematician. I've looked at all kinds of models, and I've done this particular thing for a number of years. My biggest concern is at 45.5, we have a little bit of a cushion. And since we don't know all these kinds of things that might occur, to me, we definitely want to keep it at the 45.5, not go to 44.5.
I agree.
I think we have consensus more or less on that. Where are you?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think I'm probably the most aggressive on tax rate up here. So,
does anybody want to?
The 45.5 is comfortable. I mean, I would think that, you know, if the rec center comes in at a level that, like, if we're wrong either direction on that, we're gonna have to make an adjustment
Yeah.
next year, so.
This gives us to where we can, what we talk about, hedge our bet, right? Where we're gonna actually be banking the cash. And if it stays there, we can so to do it, or choose to use it on infrastructure, which is definitely needed. Just a request as everyone else. I think we had talked about it last year, but I think it would be prudent, especially now since we have this model, we're a little bit more interactive with this. Is it possible to have quarterly updates of, not revenues, I know revenues it comes in at separate times, but is it possible to have quarterly check-ins on where our costs are coming against budget?
Yes, Miles and I met about that actually last week.
Okay.
So we want to start providing not only quarterly updates, but also monthly updates on departments. So that way you guys are receiving pertinent information once a month. It'll be from the prior month, right? Because I have to have time to do my reconciliation. So most likely would be at the workshop because that gives me a couple weeks to get my reconciliations done and prepare the reports. But yes, I'd really like to start doing that. And then probably more detailed on the quarterly side. Probably be very high level on the monthly reports and then very detailed on the quarterly side. And I'll let you add as well.
Yeah, we were considering really for the monthly report just being inside the council weekly update instead of Jared coming up here every month and doing a financial presentation. But quarterly,
You don't enjoy that?
but quarterly, so that you all are aware and the public's aware. But you all would get information inside your council packet monthly.
That would be
And we
great.
talked about the timing of that probably being after the 15th of the month each month.
Right.
And it would show you know, each department listed out and expenditures, the budget expenditures, where we are to date, percentage spent to date. So yes, we're taking that on.
That's amazing. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we'll probably start that in August, starting with 2024's budget year. I'll just have to play around and just get a feel for what you guys are looking for, right? So we could look at it as a percentage of the year versus percent spent, and then a certain percent variance is what we'll look at. So if it's above 10%, we look at it, identify what's going on. If it's below, like let's say we've not spent enough, why have we not spent? Kind of identify those, and then we can, you know, work that out as we go along to decide what you guys actually want to look at. But we'll start that in August.
I think that'd be great. It will also probably help the budget discussions in the future as well. I think that'd be great.
It's nice to be caught up and
Yeah.
be able to provide that.
And with all that said, and cognizant of the fact that we've not only beaten a dead horse, we've killed it like 3 or 4 times.
Yes, we have.
I would make a motion to approve the budget as proposed in our packet.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay,
Excellent.
very good.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Council.
Jared
Yes.
and Jamie.
And
Your hard work.
what's
I'm
7
not
minutes?
in charge of the agenda, this is the mayor.
And Miles. All right, next we have a discussion.
Hold on, Charlie. We might have an amendment to the agenda.
The interview's at 5, right? Mm-hmm.
And to respect their time, some of them have family commitments later.
He's here.
Well, we have multiple interviews, between now and 5:45. As long as Tiffany would be okay with moving your items after the interviews.
I would
Are you ready with that? Or is
Would
that
we
your
need-
time?
make a motion to amend the agenda to move.
I think Charlie can just decide that, right?
Yeah, he's the chair.
I don't want to get the list. Miles.
Yeah, Mayor, they're talking about
And-
taking this board committee interviews up and then moving down
Yeah.
the list here and then talking through this
Right.
text amendment after.
Yeah, 'cause he's already here, 4:55.
Correct.
All right,
Miles and Mayor, can we release some of our staff, or do they need to remain for this whole time?
No, that's fine. Everybody can leave if they need to, except for Tiffany. She's got a presentation later, so Tiffany, hang around.
Of course, everyone is welcome to stay.
He has withdrawn his application. Told you it was glued.
Withdrawn? Okay.
closed session.
This person right here is withdrawn, so just
Person withdrawn.
Okay.
Jonathan?
our IT person again to look at that and fix this.
Jonathan,
It'll be
right?
top priority this week
Yeah.
for sure.
Who do we have?
First person on the list is Jonathan Belmont, Wilson, Jonathan Wilson.
Not here yet, but we can start with some of the individuals that are.
Okay. ABC board. Is Jonathan Wilson here?
Okay, the first one, the first one we have here right now is Jennifer Tracy.
Who?
Jennifer Tracy is here. And
Jennifer Tracy,
Carl
okay.
Hill.
Okay. All right. Jennifer,
Come on up.
you got a seat for her?
We can pull, would you feel comfortable standing? I said all day in work.
Okay.
Wow. You're really smart. You got a master's degree from Harvard.
Yeah, one painful class at a time, though.
Yeah.
So,
That's an even better school than Wake Forest.
I like
That's
to
not a high bar to
Wow.
I like to tell people that I really enjoyed my undergraduate time because I was not very smart. But in my master's degree, I went back for me. So I enjoyed learning the second time around as opposed to just enjoying school the second time around. And ended up getting nominated for a thesis prize. I lost to the girl that started the Green Hotels program for TripAdvisor. So I can't feel too bad about that, right? But I've really enjoyed my experience with sustainability.
Did you go to undergrad at Harvard too?
No. No, I went to a small Pennsylvania state school called Edinburgh.
The Fighting Scots.
The Fighting Scots.
Of course.
So you must be from Pennsylvania?
No, he
No,
knows.
he just
No,
knows
he's
all
the
of this
master of
stuff.
trivia
Oh,
and all
okay,
that
okay,
area.
okay. Yeah, I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, and just relocated here about 2 years ago now.
So talk to us about, you obviously are well versed in sustainability. Talk to us about how you might translate all of that experience into your role on the ESB and with respect to the city of Belmont.
So, for me, it's this, I am relatively green, to use a pun intended, when it comes to application in a city environment, right? All of my business has been in this, or all of my experience has been in the business world, right? So for my day job, I'm a global account manager for FedEx, and I manage the second largest account for the company. Which is how I fell in love with sustainability, right? And as a salesperson, we're constantly chasing customer goals, and what's important to my customer is important to me. So I put myself back through school to learn sustainability, and the only real application I've had is in transportation and in logistics and in supply chain. That doesn't mean that those skills can't translate to this environment, because I think they're very similar, right? Like, whatever our goals are as a city, I'd like to actually lend some experience in embedding it into the decision-making process through each of the committees, through each of the different decisions that need to be made for the town, right? Belmont is experiencing enormous growth, and I love that it is, but I hate that it is, because the reason that I came here is I love the little small town feel. So how do you grow sustainably and preserve what we have is, really my interest in participating.
Amen.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Jennifer?
Let me ask you, in the two years that you've been here, has anything struck you that we need to do that, or is there anything in particular? I know you just gave a broad picture, but did anything pique your interest, or did you identify anything in particular?
Yeah, so, I think one of the things that I've seen the city do very well is seek validity to some of the programs that you've already instituted. I think there's 4 subcommittees from what I read. So as opposed to being more of a bolt-on. I'm seeing you do that where you're embedding it into your philosophies as you plan things. But I would like to see some additional social outreach type stuff. I think a lot of folks tend to focus on the economics piece because that's where the money lies, right? And you also focus on the easy, tangible stuff, like Duke Energy is a big part of our community. So, you know, you have water and electric and conservation efforts. But then there's also like this social component that how do you tap into the community members and make them feel passionate about it too? So that's the piece that I'd like to see, maybe where I could add a little bit of value because I'm a salesperson. That's what I do for a living, right? Like, hopefully that would be a good area for us to pursue.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Jennifer? Nope. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, and thank you so much for accommodating me early in the schedule. I gotta run to pick up my son from Budo. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Charles Hill.
Good.
How you doing,
Good, how are
Charles?
you?
Familiar faces here.
You want to serve on the ABC board?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
And you have ABC board experience in another jurisdiction.
That is correct. Yep, for Cramerton from 2019 to 2022.
Do you live in Overlake?
I do. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I'm moving in there. Katie's your wife?
Indeed. She's famous around. When do you move in?
August, September-ish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll be there soon.
Good. Anybody have any questions for Mr.
I
Hill?
guess I do. Cramerton wanted to run hours for us, and we chose to do it ourselves.
Okay.
So what would you think as far as what you see with Cramerton, the ABC board, compared to us, or what do you know about Cramerton that you think has worked well?
That's a great question. So when I got onto the Cramerton ABC board, there was a little bit of financial problems they had with their record keeping and stuff, so I kind of jumped right into the fire, and we had to straighten their books out. Then once that was remedied, we really put a lot of emphasis on our second location. And I know that Belmont has one location. I'm wondering if you guys are looking at expanding down South Point Road.
They actually are. They are actually looking at that. So we have to do something on our end before they can proceed. But how is the second location done? Have you been?
The second
pleased with that?
location in Cramerton is done immensely well.
Okay.
We're catching they were catching all the traffic from Nolan Farms, new development down Union Road.
Yep.
So we actually saw a lot of growth in our second store. When I was on that Cramerton ABC board, we couldn't understand why Belmont wasn't trying to pursue down South Point Road and capture all that growth with the McLean neighborhoods. Left and right down there.
What were you doing Saturday at the second location? Do you know? They had a huge number of people. There was some kind of
They do.
promotional
So
something.
the general manager there, Greg, he does a really great job of. It's kind of like a raffle.
I was going to say
where
it's an auction where they bring in like rare type of whiskeys.
that's
and
they get
stuff
these
like that.
vendors to come in from all over North Carolina, and you can sample their selections,
Oh,
and
okay.
then you enter into a raffle to try to win the bottle.
Okay.
There was a lot of people there Saturday. I did
Yeah,
see
they
that.
were.
There was a ton.
I had reports. Well, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about the success of the second location in Cramerton. How did the first location continue on after the second location?
It's been very steady.
Okay.
Throughout as far back as I can remember, it was really steady as far as sales go. That was my concern when I knew that they were putting in a second location was sales at location one dropping off, but it was very steady because you have your regulars. That's what I've learned in the ABC business is you have your regulars, and they're going to come from hours away to get what they need.
How long were you on the Cramerton board?
For 3 years.
3 years?
My wife and I bought our starter home in Cramerton, and then saved up our money, and then we're able to build, hopefully, our forever home down in McLean, the Overlake neighborhood across from Stanton. And for those of you who don't know, grew up in Belmont, born and raised, went off into the Air Force and came back and got my degree in finance and have been working at U.S. Bank since.
Good.
So if we are looking at expanding, you would be a good asset to have, I would think, to help guide us in that expansion.
Yeah, so I actually was pretty hands-on in that process with the state and trying to figure out the location and then how to best set up that location. That was our biggest concern, was setting up the store appropriately. So I actually have a decent bit of experience in that. So yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't think people always appreciate how difficult it is opening retail. Getting that right is.
Liquor sells itself, though, Mark. You have to
Well,
work with pizza.
Yeah, I mean, well, the two actually really should complement each other. But yeah, I mean, I think having someone who's done it before will be immensely valuable. That wasn't really a question, but more important endorsement, I guess.
So what you graduate from South? There's some.
Mr. You might remember me. I grew up playing soccer.
Yes,
Chris,
well, that's what I
all
thought,
those
but I was
years
not going
ago.
to ask it that way.
Yeah.
You look a bit different from
Yeah,
that
I
time.
kind of grew up probably looking a lot like my dad now. Right?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to say. I was being careful how I phrased the question. Okay, thanks.
Well, you know, just all on topic, but not really relevant. I know somebody, through my daughter, who went to this lottery. And she said that I was like, what do you mean he was at the ABC store the night before at 4:30 a.m. in line? He was the 10th person.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently he is collecting and creating a whiskey bar in his house. And apparently you had some rare, much sought after bottle. And I said, you couldn't fathom getting in line at 4:30 in the morning for that.
Exactly. That's not my cup of tea, but there are people that they come from hours away.
Yeah.
One of Cramerton's biggest buyers is a gentleman that lives up in the Boone area that drives down to the Cramerton specific store and buys thousands and thousands of dollars worth of alcohol.
Because you get things you cannot access.
Exactly.
Okay. It's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, those raffles are really interesting. I've been to one or two at the Cramerton one. You get, like I said, you get a bottle of like Eagle Rare that you never find or anything like that. But the cool thing with the ABC store and the regulations with it, if there are good stuff with it, it keeps the cost down, so you're attainable as opposed to if you go to another state or something, it's not affordable.
Google McDougal's.
Interesting.
Anybody have any other questions for
I do
Charles?
not.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Hope
Thank you,
have a
Charles.
great
I
rest of your day.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Got Donald Butler, Maria Portone. They're not here.
Okay. What about the second guy?
He has withdrawn his
Okay.
application, Grayson Haynes.
Yes.
He has withdrawn his application.
Okay.
So we've got 2 applicants for 2 positions on that one?
No, because if
I
you
like
go
that guy.
down,
Oh, I'm reading the wrong line. 6. Oh, okay. Never mind.
you have a lot of.
Yeah, I see Parks and Rec is real popular. I wonder what's driving that. What's the ex officio position on ESB?
So they want to identify someone that has expertise. So I guess the board would say, okay, we want somebody that has expertise in an arborist or something that is a person that has professional experience in a specific area that would help them.
Oh, okay. So it's not really ex officio. It's more of like a expert.
They've talked about that too at some of the board meetings. I think there's one tomorrow night actually. The last one got postponed. And it's so hard to fill that position because there's just been no applicants that meet that qualification
Well, with
to
the
check
last
that box.
Yeah.
I mean, a master's in.
That's what I was just about to kind of allude, maybe that checks, I don't know, I don't know if that's something the ESB board has to determine or how that's determined, but in some type of capacity, they have to have some type of professional knowledge into that. So.
I would just say ex officio position in the bylaws is a non-voting member.
Mm-hmm.
And it is somebody that's really supposed to be able to offer technical expertise to the board. And so sometimes board members themselves have technical expertise. They're also voting as part of the advisory board decision. Ex officio would not, for the current bylaws, be a voting member of that body. And they don't have
Just
to
make that,
reside
yeah.
in the city of Belmont.
Okay, that's why that's
okay.
there.
I was
Gotcha.
gonna say, why would you make that non-voting? That makes more
I think for a long time there was
Got
somebody
you.
that lived outside the city limits, but maybe in the ETJ that served in that position.
Oh,
Can we, as a council, change that if that's no longer the case? I mean, I don't know. Are we advertising outside of the city limits to get someone to come in, or?
Well, it would really be up to the staff liaison, I think, to recruit somebody
Yeah.
that the board is
Mhm.
looking for
It would.
that expertise, is what when Peyton and I talked about it when she was over it.
Gotcha.
You know, it would be something that they were specifically looking for, but that's not necessarily saying that they couldn't ask that person to help out on a volunteer basis if they needed to. So
Oh, so like almost like just keep it there as an option, I guess, in case it ever needed.
yeah, which would make them an official board member, but bylaws can be changed at any point in time. So that might be something to talk about in July at the workshop with them, because that's when they're slated to come and speak.
I'll be here tomorrow night for their meeting too. I'm their council liaison.
Yeah, that might be something maybe they want to think through. Because, like, I'm trying, like, have you had any success in recruiting? Like, have you even looked for someone for that position? Not faulting you if you haven't. I'm just.
Sure. So I'm going to be honest that Jamie is a staff representative to that board, and it was formerly Peyton, so she is relatively new to the staff leadership role for that board. So recruitment hasn't been at the top of the list to date since Jamie's taken over. That being said, I don't know that we've had a lot of interest in that role. The one I know that is on the priority point for trying to advocate and try to see if we have interest of is the student representatives on the ESP board. They really want to have that input from the next generation sit on that board and on the board decision making. And so I know they're actively having some of their membership try to recruit through student representation. But it's certainly something that bylaws could be revisited at any point with that board.
Yeah. We had a student, and then they were like played volleyball, and they were involved with a bunch of extracurricular activities on top of this, and it
Well,
just
yeah, I
didn't
mean, any
work out.
student who's going to want to sit on this board is going to be like that.
Yeah, generally probably heavily involved, resume builders,
Yeah.
for college applications.
Maria and stuff.
Report coming, okay. All right. Next we have up to interview with us Maria Portone. How you doing, Maria? You can stand at the podium if you want to. It's a place to put your pocketbook down, you know. Now you want to serve on the
Environmental sustainability.
environmental, yeah, okay.
She already is.
She's
Pretty
on there
bored.
already.
Yeah, I've been finishing out a partial term.
Yeah,
And how are you enjoying it so far?
I am. I'm enjoying it a lot. We've done several good things this year and hope to do more in the future.
good.
What good things would those be?
We did a very successful recycled bag giveaway that had also instructions on what to put in the recycle bins. That was in conjunction with Garibaldi Fest. We were working on, but we didn't have enough time, a USDA grant to have a composting pilot. So that's something that we hope to pursue in the future. You know, there was a time, some of you are too young to remember, but there was a time when we didn't recycle anything. And I think composting is probably the next step towards reducing our waste stream and producing something usable out of trash, essentially repurposing it, putting it back in the soil. And
So that's what I hope to be working on, in addition to the normal duties of that committee.
Okay.
We're very involved in that. In my family, my husband still laughs because I want everything composted that can be. But I will have to tell you, I was quite taken aback Sunday. If anybody watched Sunday morning on CBS, you can now pay $7,000 and your human body can be composted, and about 300 people have done that. I'm not planning to do that at this point. We do compost at my house, but I'm not planning for myself to do
You're
that
not
direction.
planning to join
Yeah.
You don't want to be first in the nation here?
That's the thing now.
Yeah, it's a thing now. It was quite interesting.
I don't think
Are
the
you-
church would.
Are you talking about you wanting to Belmont to set up a composting site where people can bring their leaves, like the black gold, so to speak?
What we were looking at was something similar to what the town of Davidson did, where they had several locations with bins, and people would sign up and get a code for a locking bin to put their compost in there, and have a commercial composter come and collect it. It's difficult to do it at home, so I'm impressed that you do. You have to know what you're doing, or you make a real mess.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have the time, the energy, the space to do those things.
Anybody have any other questions for
I'm sorry.
Maria?
I do not.
Thank you for your
Thank
service
you very
on the
much.
board.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for serving. Appreciate that.
We also have Donald Butler here.
Donald Butler? Yes. Come on. You're next. How you doing, Donald?
Very well, how are you?
Good.
So you're
Board of Adjustments.
right, reapplying because you're filling out a
Yeah, I
completed
guess my
term.
temporary, whatever the filling
Yeah.
period ended, so now
Have we managed to give you a few hearings to get your
a couple.
feet wet and get a quorum every once in a while?
We've had an interesting time.
Yes.
The meetings are going to go better going forward. I helped to introduce John to the script so that he doesn't have to try to figure out what he's going to say from one thing to the next.
Oh,
It's
that's
just all
good.
laid out for him.
Yes.
A little bit more structure in every meeting, so that'll be nice. And but yeah, we see each other a couple times a year. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, you certainly, you have a law degree.
Yep.
And so that's a good thing to have on the Board of Adjustment since it's quasi-judicial.
Absolutely. Rein in some personalities. Help rein in.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions for Donald Butler?
What type of law do you practice? I haven't picked.
Oh, no, I work for Bank of America.
Bank of America, okay. Because obviously, since we've changed our setup here,
I tried the
looked
private
yet.
practice solo thing.
There are
And
many
challenge.
uses for a law degree besides just practicing law.
Yes.
I realize that. I wanted to have one, but I still am trying to figure it out.
The search is worthy. I hope you're lucky.
Okay.
So you have several years in Indian Trail and their Board of Adjustment. How many here in Belmont?
I don't know, 6 months probably.
6 months?
Close to a year. I
Fill
don't
out
know.
a term, yeah.
Between 6 months and a year, we probably only had 3 different items. One that carried over and over and over. But
That's actually a lot. 'Cause I was on the Board of
and I
Adjustment
expect it to be more,
previously.
honestly,
Yeah.
because
But that really is, you only have something if somebody comes and asks for a variance.
and that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
The more this city builds up. I mean, it's not tiny little Belmont anymore. I don't imagine it's gonna get smaller. Living out by the botanical gardens, I can tell you it's not.
That does seem to only go one way.
It does only go one.
Very good. Anybody have any other questions?
And thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Now, we had Seth Torrey here, but I think
Oh, hold
Jonathan,
on. Yeah.
Jonathan Pettigrew. That's you? Okay, come on. Do you want to serve on the Environmental Sustainability Board?
Yes, sir.
Good. Tell us why.
I am an energy engineer by trade and training, NC State engineer, and I've been working in energy conservation and renewables for since I got out of college in 2009. It's become a passion. It was an industry I didn't know existed until we came out in a great recession, if you will. And I've just been traveling around serving communities, wastewater treatment plants, colleges, and various commercial buildings and industrial buildings, and installing renewables. So, kind of what I like to do. I live here. I love Belmont, and my main passion is saving money and being practical. So that's kind of what I like to do: be a good steward of my customers and myself.
Contrary to popular belief, we like saving money too. So
Yeah.
that's a good combination. How you say you've worked with some municipalities. Like what do you think maybe based on your past experience could be done here in Belmont to help improve sustainability or reduce costs?
Oh, there's all kinds of things, from recycling to supply chain management of where we get our materials and services. There's energy conservation with lighting. There's wastewater projects, which now I guess we don't do that anymore. Charlotte takes care of that part. There's education. There's community involvement with high schools and middle schools. Middle schoolers seem to be more interested in that stuff than high schoolers, from my experience. But it's always good to get them involved, get the community involved, get stakeholders involved, get property owners involved, and go from there. Just first things first is assess where we are and get some goals together. And I'm sure there's some sustainability programs that are ongoing here that I'm not aware of.
Do we have any other questions for Jonathan?
Well, I'm curious, when you say we can save money by implementing certain programs, I mean, I guess it's been done in other cities. I mean, are there real savings, or are they just savings to say we're saving money, if you know what I mean? Is the juice worth the squeeze if you implement these programs?
It depends on where in the country you are and who your customer is and what their goals are. But in North Carolina, it has to be, in my line of work, we work in energy performance contracting. So the savings have to pay for the project over the life of the project, which is 15 or 20 years, somewhere in between. So it has to be worth it. It has to self-fund.
Okay.
But other states, it doesn't matter. Like Alabama, we do a lot of energy savings, and we upgrade a lot of football fields. We do AstroTurf and LED lighting that can change lighting colors and stuff. Texas, that's popular as well. So I like making it worth it. I work primarily in North Carolina and New Jersey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So much.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you. Next we have Seth Twerry.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey,
Good afternoon.
Seth, how you doing?
Awesome.
Do you have any questions for?
I guess, why do you want
Well-
to serve on the ABC board? What interests you about that?
Revenue.
Mm-hmm.
ABC board is a newly retired, looking for a passion. Belmont has become one of those passions, and I like the things that the city has been doing. So congratulations to all of you guys, ladies. And the ABC board, I figured, is one revenue generator that also creates a more positive environment.
Well, since you are looking at this area, one of the proposals with our current ABC board is to look at doing a second site. What would your opinion be about that?
Well, I absolutely think a second site is worth looking at. I haven't seen any of the facts or statistics.
We haven't either yet, so. Yeah.
You know, Town of Cramerton has two also, so I tend to go to the Town of Cramerton personally. And that's probably money left on the board
Okay.
for the city.
Your background obviously is in business. What do you think you'd bring to bear on the ABC board? Obviously, it's a business. It's been successful for us, at least the location we have. But what do you think, with your background, would be a particular asset to the board?
Honestly, I haven't been and participated in a city county board, so I don't know which facet of my component. But I'm a pretty tenacious person, consulting most of my life. It is not only business but financial services. One aspect that may apply here is most of my career was spent in anti-money laundering, anti-financial crime. So I think some of that, follow the money, even though it's highly structured, I know that comes from the state and what you get, what we get. So again, newly retired, looking for a passion to apply. And I figure this is one that wouldn't be as intensive as a city councilman.
Well, that's fair. Okay. Anybody have any other questions for me?
Notice that you're a Carolina graduate.
Is that a good or bad thing?
Oh, it's a good thing for me. I just wanted to call that out for the rest of the board, since we often hear about these other schools.
Michael and I are just like this.
Well,
I don't plan to sell alcohol. So yes, local Charlotte area. Came here in 2019. Really excited about Belmont.
The ABC board, I'm looking at your application. So, I mean, your primary is ABC, but I see also listed BTDA, Park and Rec, and Planning and Zoning. But your two primary would be Planning and Zoning, ABC board. ABC board being your first choice.
Honestly, either. With the planning and zoning, I essentially rebuilt my own house here and had a positive experience and thought I could help contribute.
Good.
One of the things I'm looking at doing in retirement is doing some building, either rehab or new construction in the area.
I may give you a call. I'm rehabbing my house.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mayor, if you go back to the beginning, Jonathan Wilson is here.
Pardon me?
If you go back to the beginning, Jonathan Wilson is here.
He's here. Jonathan Wilson, okay.
This could be a good look or a bad look that I'm late, because I just came from an ABC board meeting, and we're in executive session, and I'm the secretary,
Well,
so
forgive
if
me.
I leave
You couldn't
early,
leave.
Forgive me.
then I may not get reappointed, and in which case I'll be devastated.
well, yeah. So you filled out an unfinished term, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then, so talk to us about your experiences so far. You're secretary, and obviously as we've discussed already today, you all are considering a new location, perhaps. So maybe this would be a good time to update us on that to the extent that you can.
I think it's really exciting, and ultimately, this is a product that is very difficult to mess up in terms of selling. Right?
Oh, give us a chance.
We've been able to push the margins, and I think we've done a really, really good job of doing so. And I think we've really focused on developing an exceptional customer experience, having clean stores, well lit, all the trying to have merchandise that folks want. And our understanding as a board, after doing some research, and we're certainly doing due diligence and are working with a consultant now, is that the density of alcoholic beverage stores in places that are non-controlled are much, much denser. So, and just like restaurants in downtown Belmont, sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. And I really think that having another store for Belmont would serve the community really well. There's a ton of development on New Hope Road, South New Hope Road. We are able to kind of attract some of that. The North Belmont development is also a very interesting play, and I think that we'll be able to bring y'all some actual hard and fast numbers that you can look at and determine where the store should be.
Directionally speaking, do you guys have a preference yet in regards to where?
North or south? I mean, honestly, I think that yes.
Okay. I'm sure we'll hear
You
all
wanted to
about
give
it.
your I mean, ultimately, the question is, revenue drives the profit margin that we get to return to y'all. And ultimately, we want to put another location in the store, a location that drives maximum revenue, and that will drive maximum return to the city.
Mhm.
And we think ultimately that also supports our mission, which is to serve the citizens of Belmont.
Yep.
While at the same time, like you said, 1 + 1 can equal 3. You don't want to, take too much away from or cannibalize the existing store.
Mhm.
Well,
he
we can
did-
cannibalize the stores in other towns.
That he did not
Yes.
learn that in my
Yes,
math
exactly.
class. I did not coach him in math. I told the story, but he is one of my former students, so I can give him a good reference.
Absolutely.
So that's where that 1 + 1 = 3 comes from?
That's okay. No, and no, I mean that's a really, really important point. But what we understand in terms of like market research is that so the biggest growing segment is a product called ready to drink. There's the cans of like pre-mixed cocktails in North Carolina. You can only get those, even though they're only 7% alcohol, in the ABC store. Massive product growth there. So if you're going to the lake, you're going to spend an afternoon out on the boat, you would rather have high noons, but you're going to have to make a 20-minute trip to get those drinks versus you're going to pass another store on the way to the river, then you can just go ahead and pop by the ABC store. So ultimately, we don't think we would cannibalize business. Again, the more ABC stores that you have, the greater the pool of revenue grows. So that's kind of where I'm kind of coming up with that.
Yeah, the part with density is interesting because I hadn't thought of that before. But I'm thinking of like towns I've been in non-controlled states where it's like every corner, it seems like there's a liquor store. And
Like New Jersey.
well, that was actually exactly what I was thinking.
Or Michigan. But,
Yeah, but you can go to like these small little podunk towns in the middle of nowhere, and they'll have, 3 or 4 different package stores, but ABC stores. So I think the risk of cannibalization there is probably not too high. But yeah, I never thought about it that way until you said that, so that was interesting.
It's a really neat board, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve on it. It's been a learning experience that's awesome for me, and I think that I've been able to develop some programs and some strategies there to help lift up the teammates.
Sure.
And again, that's been a big focus of mine, and so it's been really, really good. And this is self-serving. To say this, but I do believe that. So I think I reached out at some point earlier, say, hey, I'd like to serve on this board, and you're like, we like to keep continuity in the board members. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially because I've learned more about liquor laws than I ever wanted to learn in my entire life. And it is it's a bit esoteric. There is a tribal knowledge and an understanding of an ABC store that is unique. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of keep going and see this thing through. So
Thank you for your service.
Oh man.
Well,
Thank
sort
you
of like
very much
property
for
law, huh,
coming.
Parks?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and interviewing. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Sorry I was late.
That's all right.
That's all right. You were doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Okay, next we have is Chris Spitak. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well. How are you?
Fine. You want to serve on the Parks and Recreation Board, huh?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Duquesne
why.
Duke.
Duquesne Duke. Yes, sir.
My sister went there.
Really?
Yes.
Right in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, sometimes they pronounce it up there just to be funny. Duquesne.
That's how I always say.
Yeah, Duquesne. It's a lot more fun, Duquesne.
But you have actually been a recreation director in the past.
I have actually. Yeah, it was actually a wonderful experience. I brought, really a good opportunity for the local area. It was a small town. And, I had a lot of fun, and I was actually a Parks and Recreation Management director. Actually, my undergrad was in that field. And at the time, I was unsure of what I wanted to do. But working in that field, the power behind recreation, of all ages, that connectivity was powerful. And really, really enjoyed it and embraced that experience. And with that, that was a foundation point for me on, relationships. So I went a little bit further and, got a master's degree in therapy and counseling. So kind of put a hold on the recreational part, but I've always had a passion for the recreational aspect from the individual, from my own family, and the community piece. I think Belmont is phenomenal. The opportunities there, of course, with the recreation center, and just with the community thriving with people who want to be well emotionally, physically, spiritually, the whole nine. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for individuals to be more healthy and really have some great times, especially with all the resources as well.
What do you think of our skateboard park?
I'm sorry?
What do you think about our skateboard park? Have you seen it?
I'm not going to lie to you. It looks phenomenal. I've heard just tremendous things from some of the individuals I work with who use it as an outlet. I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified of like skateboarding for me was the ultimate. You were the toughest individual to sign up and be okay with getting balled up. They really take it as a sign of like, hey, this is something that we do. I always feared and respected them. So I'm scared of skateboards.
What kind of facilities? What kind of facilities and programs did you have at your the town where you were rec director?
Believe it or not, our biggest resource was people.